The proponents of what's called Salafi jihadism, which means following the path of Muhammad. They claim to be following the path of Muhammad. They claim that the doctrine goes all the way back to Muhammad in the 7th century. But in fact, it's really a 20th century phenomenon. What we're witnessing now is a 20th century phenomenon. And so they basically have twisted the doctrine to fit their strategic goals, you might say. So it does have a purpose. They have a goal. They're very clear about it. And then they have a doctrine which rationalizes their pursuit of that goal. So, well, the goal, you can see it pretty clearly with ISIS, the Islamic State. They've declared a caliphate, and that's a kind of veiled reference to Muhammad, because what it refers to is a state without boundaries. It's not a nation state, but a state which combines secular and religious leadership in one person, you might say, or head of state. So that's what caliphate is. So the Islamic State is not territorial, and it's not conventional. They don't have conventional armies. So you might say they speak a different language, figuratively and literally speaking. It's a new phenomenon, you might say, and we haven't caught up with it yet. We don't really have an understanding. A good example would be calls in Congress to declare war on ISIS, for example. Well, can you declare war on a non-state? Not an international law, you can't. Huh. Well, what happened in San Bernardino could happen in Jacksonville or any other place in the world. That's what's so terrifying and frightening.
Yeah.
And it could easily happen. So you have to worry about that. And there's still some people who take the view that we don't need to modify or change our laws and our institutions in such a way as to protect us from this new threat. They take umbrage in the First Amendment, which is kind of silly. The refusal to acknowledge the role of Islam in these terrorist acts. And so you have the president. He stubbornly resists any idea that Islam has anything to do with terrorism, and basically says almost suggests this is a form of racism to say that these terrorists are Islamic. It's not an accident; they are, and it's part of their doctrine. So where is this doctrine inculcated? Where is it? Where are people taught this? Obviously in mosques. So do you have to monitor them? Yes. If you want security, you have to. So there's great resistance to that. And do you have to police or monitor Muslim communities? Well, I don't think there's any alternative. So there's a huge barrier there. One major political party and the presidential candidates, have refused to do any of that. So, you're asking, well, what can we do? Well, they have to recognize that there have to be changes.